Hello and welcome to Stories of Science. Here, we look back on humanity's long journey to understand the world. The questions, the failures, and the breakthroughs that slowly changed how we see the universe and ourselves. We tell science as stories.
Why Gödel's theorem will make you question everything you think you know. Have you ever thought that maybe math and logic aren't perfect? Yep, you heard me right, math, it's not perfect. From the moment we start learning numbers and formulas, we're taught to believe they're the ultimate rules of the universe. But what if I told you that these perfect rules have flaws? You see, for centuries, people believed math was flawless. If you built the right set of rules, you could solve any problem. But then, along comes Gödel, a guy who looked at all this and said, "Nah, I'm gonna shake things up." Can you imagine someone shattering an entire belief system? Well, Gödel did exactly that. He didn't just challenge a wrong theory, he told everyone, "You think math is perfect? Guess what? It's got holes in it." Now, I know this sounds like some wild theory, but Gödel proved it. Who was this mathematical magician who shocked the entire field? What kind of genius and bold ideas did he have to make all the mathematicians sit up and listen? And don't think this is just some obscure math problem that doesn't affect us. Gödel's theorem has had a massive impact on everything from artificial intelligence, to computer science, to how your phone works. But wait a minute, this guy wasn't the quiet, isolated genius you might picture. His personal life? Well, it was a bit of a math freak show, crazy, lonely, and full of intense challenges. He dared to break all the rules, dared to go head to head with the biggest minds in math. This guy was anything but simple. So, want to dive into a theory that'll blow your mind? Stick with me, and let's step into Kurt Gödel's world to see how he tore apart the perfect math we thought we knew. Kurt Gödel sounds like a serious name, right? Well, his childhood and early life were just as intriguing and a bit quirky, much like the mathematical theorems he would go on to create. Born on April 28, 1906, in Brunn, which is now part of the Czech Republic, Gödel's hometown seemed pretty ordinary at first glance. But look closer, and you'd see a city steeped in history and culture, setting the stage for his brilliant mind to develop. Gödel's father, Rudolf, was an industrial manager, and his mother, Emily, was a homemaker. While their lives seemed pretty standard, they unknowingly laid the foundation for Gödel's future way of thinking. From an early age, Gödel wasn't like other kids. He wasn't into playing outside or hanging out with peers. Instead, he'd bury himself in books, especially books about numbers and logic. His parents may not have been scholars themselves, but they quickly realized their son was a bit different, and definitely a lot more talented. To Gödel, math wasn't just about numbers. It was the key to understanding the world, the weapon to solve every problem. During his school years in Brunn, he already showed extraordinary mathematical ability. Picture this, a young boy in class, asking questions that were more complex than what even the teacher could answer. He was already grappling with some of the most cutting-edge philosophy and math concepts of the time, and getting it. No wonder his classmates found him a little odd. Ever meet that kid who could see through the problem right away, making the teacher go whoa? Yeah, Gödel was that kid. He'd shrug off the silly jokes his peers laughed about, thinking they were trivial distractions. His mind was elsewhere, deep in the numbers. In 1924, Gödel moved to the University of Vienna to continue his studies. This was a huge leap for him, not just academically, but intellectually. It was here that he met some of the greatest minds of his time: John von Neumann, Hans Hahn, and others. Von Neumann's logical brilliance left Gödel in awe, and Hahn introduced him to modern logic. Vienna became the alchemy lab of his mind, where ideas clashed and sparked, shaping the genius he was becoming. But even in the midst of intellectual giants, Gödel remained, well, Gödel. In class, he didn't shy away from questioning professors or challenging their views. Imagine the scene: a young genius, boldly debating philosophy with his professors, and already convinced of his own theories. Once he settled on an idea, there was no changing his mind. This rebellious academic style earned him a somewhat aloof reputation. He was the lone wolf of the scholarly world. You might think Gödel was just a bookworm, socially awkward and out of touch. Well, kind of, but then again, isn't it often the people who break the rules that end up changing the world? Strangely enough, Gödel didn't care much for social events. He preferred to stay in his world of logic and philosophy, shying away from parties or social gatherings. This social disconnect even affected his relationships with other scholars. Even von Neumann, one of the brightest minds of the time, couldn't always get through to him. Imagine a brilliant philosopher and logician, but one who found it hard to relate to the chaos of everyday social life. Despite his social detachment, Gödel's insight into math and philosophy was unparalleled. He could grasp complex philosophical concepts that most people would find mind-boggling, but when it came to everyday social situations, he often seemed like an alien. His antisocial behavior, though, was really just part of his deep thinking process. He couldn't find joy in shallow conversations when his mind was occupied with complex, profound problems. And yet, this seemingly solitary genius was the one to reveal some of the most profound secrets of the mathematical world. Want to know how Gödel shattered the very rules of math and changed the way we understand it? Stay tuned, we're about to dive into that mind-bending journey. Kurt Gödel's breakthrough wasn't just a discovery in math, it was an academic earthquake. It all started with a paper he published in 1931 called On Formally Undecidable Propositions of Principia Mathematica and Related Systems. This single paper shook the very foundation of how mathematicians viewed completeness and logic. As early as 1929, Gödel was already thinking about his incompleteness theorem. At the time, he was still a young mathematician at the University of Vienna. One of his biggest influences was David Hilbert's program, which aimed to build a complete mathematical system to prove the truth or falsity of all mathematical statements. But Gödel had doubts. He began wondering if it was possible to prove that any sufficiently powerful system would inevitably contain statements that could not be proven true or false. Until then, mathematicians believed that by creating a strong enough set of axioms, all mathematical statements could be either proven or disproven within that system. But Gödel quickly realized that things were far from perfect. After intense reasoning, he came to a shocking conclusion: any sufficiently powerful system would contain propositions that could neither be proven true nor false within the system. Gödel's theorem consists of two parts. The first part, known as the first incompleteness theorem, states that in any sufficiently powerful formal system, there will be statements that cannot be proven true or false within that system. In other words, there will always be certain statements that cannot be derived from the system's axioms. Gödel proved this using self-reference, creating a statement like, "This statement cannot be proven true." It's similar to the paradox, "This statement is false." By using self-reference, Gödel showed that some propositions can't be proven or disproven within a system, creating a paradox that proves the system's limitations. The second part, known as the second incompleteness theorem, shows that if a system is complete and consistent, then the system's consistency cannot be proven within the system itself. In simpler terms, you can't prove that your own system is both complete and consistent from within that same system. Gödel's paper was published in 1931, and its impact was immediate. Mathematicians realized that this theory completely undermined Hilbert's program. It meant that mathematics was not as complete as they once believed. This discovery was groundbreaking. Many mathematicians and scholars were stunned, struggling to understand how a system of axioms and rules could lead to propositions that were unprovable. Gödel's work revealed the inherent limitations of mathematics, a concept almost unimaginable at the time. His theorem also pushed the development of logic, especially formal logic. Scholars started rethinking the concept of completeness, exploring new systems to understand the relationship between logic and mathematics. Gödel's work laid the groundwork for computer science, showing the limits of computational systems and paving the way for the Turing machine. In the late 1930s, David Hilbert, one of the leading mathematicians of the time, responded with a complex attitude. Hilbert had been pushing for his program, believing that any mathematical truth could be proven with enough axioms. But Gödel's theorem proved the limits of that theory, and Hilbert, stunned by the discovery, almost never spoke about his program again. Gödel's theorem was a direct challenge to the core belief about completeness in mathematics. Until then, many believed that with enough axioms and logical rules, all mathematical truths could be proven. But Gödel told them it's impossible. Some propositions will always remain unprovable or undecidable within a system. This finding reshaped the future of mathematical logic and set the stage for a new era of foundational mathematics. To help visualize Gödel's theorem, imagine a piece of paper with the statement, "This statement is not true." If you think it's true, then it's false. If you think it's false, then it's true. This self-contradictory logic structure is exactly what Gödel used to demonstrate his incompleteness theorem. By using self-reference, Gödel constructed a proposition that shows some statements in a system cannot be proven true or false. These statements don't need external evidence, and they can't be solved within the current logic system. They create contradictions within the system itself. Gödel's discovery didn't just change mathematics, it had a profound impact on philosophy, computer science, and artificial intelligence. Figures like Alan Turing and John von Neumann were heavily influenced by Gödel. His work laid the theoretical foundation for computer science and AI. In particular, his incompleteness theorem supported Turing's theory of the Turing machine and the development of computational complexity theory. This finding also showed that computers couldn't solve every problem. Most importantly, Gödel's theorem challenged our very understanding of knowledge. He proposed that not all truths could be discovered or proven, and some truths might forever be beyond the reach of our current logical systems. This notion opened up a new perspective on epistemology and modern philosophy, setting the stage for the future study of information theory and knowledge. Even though the first incompleteness theorem shook the world, Gödel didn't stop there. In 1938, he refined his research with the second incompleteness theorem, further demonstrating the incompleteness of mathematical systems. He not only showed that systems cannot solve all problems, but also proved that a system's consistency cannot be proven within the system itself. This deepened the philosophical implications of Gödel's work. These two theorems have provided us with profound insights into the limitations of mathematics and science. They also made Gödel a groundbreaking figure in the history of mathematics. His work continues to have a lasting impact in fields like philosophy, mathematics, and computer science today. David Hilbert, one of the most influential mathematicians of the early 20th century, proposed a theory called formalism, which suggested that every mathematical statement could be proven through a system of axioms. The idea was simple: if a mathematical system was powerful enough, all the truths of mathematics could be derived from a set of rules. When Kurt Gödel entered the University of Vienna and began encountering Hilbert's ideas, he was intrigued. But over time, Gödel began to question whether mathematics could truly be complete through such a system. In 1929, Gödel started to wonder, could there be mathematical statements that couldn't be proven or disproven within a formal system? While Hilbert championed the axiomatic approach, Gödel began to suspect that even the most powerful systems would still have unsolvable problems. This suspicion eventually led to Gödel challenging formalism itself. His research moved away from Hilbert's idea of mathematical completeness, and soon, he would drop a bombshell in the mathematical world with his incompleteness theorem. In 1931, Gödel's groundbreaking paper, on formally undecidable propositions of Principia Mathematica and related systems, was published, shaking the foundations of mathematics. His first incompleteness theorem stated that any sufficiently powerful axiomatic system would contain statements that could neither be proven true nor false within that system. This meant that the idea of mathematical completeness wasn't a fixed truth, but rather an ideal that, in practice, couldn't be fully achieved. This discovery didn't just challenge formalism, it made Gödel a controversial figure in mathematics. Gödel proved his point using a technique called self-reference. He crafted a statement like, "This statement cannot be proven true." A statement like this can't be easily classified as true or false, but it creates a paradox within the system. It's like the "this sentence is false" paradox, and it shocked mathematicians at the time. Gödel used this method to show that there are certain propositions that will forever remain unprovable or undecidable within an axiomatic system. The impact of Gödel's discovery wasn't just limited to mathematics, it also pushed philosophers to rethink the nature of knowledge and truth. For Gödel, mathematics wasn't like Hilbert's vision, where all truths could be proven with axioms and rules. Some truths, he argued, are simply beyond human reasoning and logic. Gödel's challenge to the mathematical community also sparked deep philosophical reflections on the nature of truth and knowledge. Despite his undeniable mathematical genius, Gödel's personal life was marked by solitude. He wasn't particularly good at socializing, and at social events, he often seemed cold and detached. Instead of mingling, he preferred to dive deep into his inner world, contemplating questions about truth and knowledge. His isolation wasn't just a personality trait, it was more a result of his profound understanding of the limits of human knowledge. In Gödel's view, social interactions and relationships couldn't be neatly explained or understood the way mathematics and philosophy could be. Interestingly, though, even though Gödel wasn't a social butterfly, his deep thinking often stirred up discussions in philosophical circles. There's a joke that if Gödel had attended a social gathering, he might have said, "I don't really believe the universe has perfect answers unless you can prove it." While that might seem a bit out of place, it perfectly reflects Gödel's deep skepticism about the nature of knowledge. His humor often carried a serious underlying reflection on the world, challenging not just the completeness of mathematics, but sparking broader philosophical reflections on the nature of truth itself. In 1939, Kurt Gödel made a life-changing decision to move to the United States and join the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. This move didn't just alter his academic trajectory, it also brought him into close contact with two towering figures in mathematics and physics, John von Neumann and Albert Einstein. While his years in Princeton were filled with intellectual sparks and profound insights, they were also marked by a certain solitude. The meeting between Gödel and von Neumann could be described as a collision of minds. Von Neumann, one of the most brilliant mathematicians of the 20th century, made groundbreaking contributions to computer science, quantum mechanics, and game theory. But despite their shared brilliance, their views on many issues, especially mathematics, were worlds apart. Von Neumann was a staunch supporter of formalism, believing that all mathematical and logical problems could ultimately be solved through precise rules and calculations. Gödel, however, had already proven that even the most robust mathematical systems couldn't solve every problem, as outlined in his famous incompleteness theorems. Despite their differences, Gödel and von Neumann didn't clash as enemies, rather, they engaged in deep debates and exchanged ideas. Von Neumann sometimes brushed off Gödel's philosophical musings, while Gödel challenged von Neumann's assumptions, particularly regarding the limits of computer programs and automated reasoning. These intellectual exchanges weren't just academic debates, they were a battle of ideas that pushed both men to reconsider their fundamental beliefs. Even though they disagreed at times, the bond between Gödel and von Neumann remained strong. Their collaboration helped advance both of their work, with Gödel influencing von Neumann's approach to mathematics and computing, while von Neumann's mathematical expertise and computational theories left their mark on Gödel. They may not have agreed on everything, but their friendship helped expand the boundaries of mathematics and logic. Unlike his relationship with von Neumann, Gödel's connection with Albert Einstein was more philosophical than scientific. The two great minds spent countless hours in Princeton's hallways and coffeehouses, discussing everything from physics to the nature of knowledge itself. Einstein's theory of relativity had already revolutionized our understanding of space, time, and energy, but Gödel's explorations in logic and mathematics offered a different perspective on the universe's fundamental structure. Gödel didn't just accept relativity, he questioned it. He often posed philosophical questions to Einstein about the implications of relativity, especially regarding the concept of absolute truth and the nature of time. One of the most fascinating discussions between them centered around Gödel's time travel paradox. Gödel suggested that if the structure of the universe were cyclical, forming a closed time loop, it might allow for some form of time travel. Though this idea never gained traction in the physics community, it speaks to Gödel's profound engagement with the philosophical implications of Einstein's work. Gödel's curiosity about physics didn't stop with relativity. He also raised intriguing questions about quantum mechanics, especially concerning the relationship between the observer and the observed. He saw a parallel between quantum mechanics' uncertainty principle and his own incompleteness theorem, that there are systems whose completeness can never be fully defined or predicted. While Einstein and Gödel often disagreed, especially since Einstein famously said, God does not play dice with the universe. Their debates pushed both men to think more deeply about the nature of reality. Despite Gödel's reputation for being a solitary, introverted figure, his conversations with Einstein often had a playful and humorous edge. Imagine the two of them discussing quantum mechanics in Princeton's coffeehouse, debating ideas with passion but sometimes sitting in silence, thinking deeply. After a long pause, Gödel might casually break the silence with, "Do you think the essence of quantum mechanics is like our mathematical systems, that it can never be fully described?" Einstein, perhaps with a smile, might reply, "Gödel, I'd rather believe there are things in the universe that even quantum mechanics can't explain." These philosophical exchanges weren't just intellectually stimulating, they were also filled with a certain humor. Gödel, despite his reserved and lonely nature, respected Einstein deeply and was often inspired by their discussions. Their relationship wasn't about agreeing on every detail, it was about exploring the limits of knowledge and challenging the very foundations of what they knew about the universe. Gödel's time at Princeton didn't just bring him into contact with intellectual giants like von Neumann and Einstein. It also allowed him the space to continue developing his ideas, particularly about the intersection of mathematics, logic, and physics. While he didn't produce another groundbreaking theorem like the incompleteness theorems during his time there, his philosophical musings continued to influence later generations of scholars. But Gödel's years at Princeton were also among his most isolated. He often preferred solitude over socializing, retreating into his own world of deep thought. Nonetheless, his time in Princeton proved to be a critical period in his intellectual development. The conversations with Einstein and von Neumann didn't just shape his own ideas, they challenged him to see the limits of human knowledge in a new light. Gödel's Princeton years were a period of intellectual tumult and growth. His collaborations and debates with Einstein and von Neumann offered new insights into everything from mathematics to philosophy. From time travel paradoxes to the uncertainty principle, Gödel's years in Princeton were a microcosm of his lifelong dialogue with the deepest questions about the universe. While these years were marked by isolation, they were also filled with wisdom, challenges, and profound intellectual discoveries. As Kurt Gödel entered his later years, his life became increasingly marked by mental struggles and a rapid decline in physical health. By the time he was in his 40s, cracks began to show in his mental state. His obsessive fears about his health began to overshadow everything else, affecting both his personal life and academic work. He became more and more reclusive, increasingly anxious in his interactions with the world. One of the most striking aspects of Gödel's later years was his extreme fear of food. In the mid-1950s, he developed an intense paranoia about being poisoned. He refused to eat food prepared by anyone else, insisting on preparing everything himself and inspecting ingredients carefully. He even told friends that he would only eat basic foods, convinced that modern food was full of toxins. His fear grew so strong that he wouldn't even drink milk, suspecting it might be contaminated. But it wasn't just food that worried him. His overall health deteriorated, and his fear of poisoning extended to doctors as well. He was so afraid of being harmed by medical professionals that he refused to seek any kind of medical help. This fear isolated him even further, and apart from his wife, Martha, almost no one could get close to him. Every aspect of life became a source of anxiety, whether it was the food he ate or simply walking outside. He lived in constant dread. These fears deeply affected his academic work. Although Gödel had made groundbreaking contributions to mathematics and logic, his later years were marked by a lack of progress in his research. His intellectual creativity, which had once sparked major breakthroughs, began to stagnate. He withdrew from the academic world, no longer participating in the lively debates and discussions that had once defined his career. The passion and drive that had fueled his early work were replaced by isolation and a growing sense of despair. In the late 1950s, his relationship with Martha, though devoted, began to show signs of strain. She had done everything in her power to care for him, but his relentless fears and unreasonable worries left her exhausted. She tried to create a safe and comfortable environment for him, but Gödel's paranoia made it difficult for them to connect. Martha later recalled feeling like a helpless guardian, unable to help Gödel escape the mental prison he had created for himself. Despite his personal struggles, Gödel never stopped thinking deeply about the big philosophical questions. In the quiet of his mind, despite the overwhelming distrust of the outside world, he continued to ponder ideas about time, truth, and the limits of mathematics. His later years were marked by solitude and unease, but his intellectual curiosity remained undiminished, and his reflections on the nature of knowledge and truth continued to shape the philosophical discourse long after he withdrew from public life. Gödel passed away in 1978 at the age of 71 due to health complications. Though his final years were overshadowed by mental turmoil, his contributions to mathematics, philosophy, and computer science left an indelible mark on the intellectual landscape. His incompleteness theorems remain one of the most profound breakthroughs in 20th century mathematics, reshaping our understanding of mathematical completeness and sparking the development of computer science. Gödel's life may have been one of isolation and anxiety, but his intellectual legacy transcended these struggles. His ideas continue to influence fields like philosophy and computer science, proving that even in the darkest of times, the mind can reach profound depths that change the course of human thought. As the old saying goes, the greatest minds are often the most tortured. And in Gödel's case, that was certainly true. Gödel's view of the world doesn't give us a clear, comforting conclusion. It leaves us with a thought-provoking question: are we ready to challenge the limits of our understanding? If you can grasp Gödel's theorem, maybe you've already seen something deep beneath the surface of mathematics and the world, something most people miss. His theorem isn't just a mathematical puzzle, it's a philosophical one, reminding us to be wary of any theory or framework that claims to be perfect. No matter how smart we get, there will always be things beyond our grasp. So, the next time you're sure about something in the world, ask yourself, what would Gödel think? His answer might just make you rethink the very idea of certainty and imperfection. After all, as the saying goes, don't count your chickens before they hatch. Sometimes things aren't as clear-cut as they seem.
The people who change the world usually just think one step deeper. If this story made you see things differently, hit like, subscribe, and save it. See you in the next story.